All right. This is an interesting topic. I think I've heard about Walther Stennes and the Stennes Revolt in 1931. I wanted to cover this because I think it's so relevant that a lot of the so-called Wignats and whatnot don't want to discuss. So let's break this down. So Walther Stennes, I'll just say Walter because it's easier. Okay, head of the SA in Berlin. By 1931, the SA leadership was starting to develop the belief that it should have more than just a political role, which is primarily defending Nazi meetings and attacking political adversaries. Basically, they were street fighters. They were beating folks up and everything else. Walther Stennes is one of the leaders who believed this to be the future of the SA. They basically wanted to be a paramilitary force. And let's see here. This was the future of the SA. All right. I'm gonna give my own takes here, but basically, this was kind of at odds with what Hitler wanted because basically he wanted to be legit and that he already had support from industrialists, this and that. And the SA being thugs and everything else like that, basically, there were some legitimate folks, and some of them believed in socialism, and there were some aspects of like Mahomo fascism that were there. Hold on, give me just one moment. Doing okay? Okay, just checking. All right. I was using some naughty words and I wanted to make sure I had the door shut. So, there were, homosexuals, this and that there. Now, apparently, this Walther Stennes didn't like Ernst Röhm, which was, pretty good. He understood that, yeah, he was a fag. He did recognize that Ernst Röhm was a faggot, but I don't use that language too often. But I'll use it in this case. But more importantly was the issue of they weren't being paid enough. Saw this grievance in 1930 coming to the foray. He was vocal in his belief that as men provided such an important role for the Nazi Party hierarchy, they should be better. They should get more money. This is a common thing, right? SA also demanded that 3 of their men should represent the Nazi Party in the Reichstag. He rejected that idea, and he said basically, I don't care how much you're getting paid. Fuck you, basically. That's what Hitler said. He refused to meet Stennes, who had gone all the way from Berlin to Munich to see the party leader to express his personal grievances. So, repeating his demands to Joseph Goebbels, that unless the demands were agreed to, 15,000 SA men in Berlin would leave the organization. So there's some, like I say, Stennes here I think is bluffing. The only reason I do this is because I'm reading this from History Learning site, even though this is basically a copy of the Wikipedia article. So yeah. Don't worry, we're getting there. We're getting there, folks. Don't worry. Hang on. So basically, on August 30th, 1930, Goebbels was going to give a speech, and the SA provided security, but Stennes ordered the men not to come in. And so Stennes ordered the Berlin SA. At the same time, a future party propaganda minister was speaking in an obvious sign of defiance. So they refused to go. They were like, we're not going. So what did Goebbels do? He asked the SS to come over. And they are going to be the guard at the Gau office in Berlin. Response of the Berlin SA would be one of fury. They attacked the Berlin Gau office and wrecked it and beat up the SS guards who were there. Hitler was also taken aback by the occurrence that he left the Wagner Festival in Bayreuth to fly to Berlin to restore some form of order. Hitler managed to defuse the problem. Next day, met with a number of SA men from Berlin, met 2,000 Berlin SA men and promised them to pay them more pay. and also that he would take over as supreme commander of the SA. It was this later move by Hitler that went down well. SA had craved from better leadership. So yeah, basically the Führer principle, the Führerprinzip. However, Hitler had no desire to actually run the SA, and he called on Ernst Röhm to take over the day-to-day running of the SA. Hitler remained supreme commander, but it was a title only. Crappy equipment. There's a lack of equipment, or just lack of equipment, Stennes was saying. He was also highly critical of Röhm, who was known to be a homosexual, believed that Röhm and his behavior brought the SA into disrepute. So it sounds like this Stennes guy was like I say, he was a bit of a rabble-rouser, but yeah. So don't worry, we're getting to the good stuff. Basically, here's kind of the idea of why Hitler believed what he believed. Ordered the SA to stop its very public acts of violence and to recognize the superior authority. This is why the Night of the Long Knives happened, by the way, folks. This is why it happened in 1934. Is basically people like Walther Stennes were like, hey, we need more money. You're not going to pay us. And we want to have better representation. It's like, if we're going to be doing this guard stuff and just be your thugs, we want to get better paid for it. And Hitler's like, no. Thank you for the early days and helping us fight the commies, but guess what? Now we're going to be more legit. And, SS has cooler uniforms, so yeah. So what happened, from that? Over the leaders, yeah. This time was very public acts of violence. Previous years, SA had been used by the Nazi Party to break up rallies held by its political adversaries, mainly the Communist Party. Violence was common, and to those outside of the Nazi Party, it brought nothing but discredit to Weimar Germany. For a number of years, the SA had acted as a self-governing body. Basically, they could do what they wanted for the most part. Now, Hitler ordered that a country's Gauleiters had superiority over the SA. Basically, this is Hitler saying, we want to be legit. We want to be seen as a legitimate group and as a legitimate party. Not just a bunch of thugs, this and that, of folks coming around just smacking people up and, doing all that business. We want to be legit. This did not go down well with the Berlin SA. Stennes was furious and believed that it was a betrayal of loyal SA men who had done a great deal to get Hitler where he was in 1931. Röhm issued a letter in support of Hitler. Röhm also forbade SA leaders from speaking out in public. This is February 26th. Nazi Party was no longer a fringe party in the Reichstag. While it was not the largest party, its growth and popularity among the voters had resulted in far more. Basically, yeah. It was also at this time Hitler wanted to court support from Weimar Germany's wealthy industrialists and landowners who would not have been impressed by the violence and chaos associated with the SA. I understand your distress and your rage, but you must not bear arms. So basically, it's interesting too when Stennes makes this note to say 15,000 men would leave the SA, because here we go. So later on, after this letter that came out, you had some SA men in Berlin led by Stennes mutinied and refused to obey the orders sent out by Hitler. Stennes had become disillusioned with Hitler's leadership of the party, and the order was to him yet another example of how Hitler's leadership was letting down the Nazi Party. On March 31st, 1931, Stennes and his followers once again occupied the Gau office in Berlin. They temporarily took over the production of the Goebbels Der Angriff, and produced newspapers that were pro-Stennes. Hitler ordered Goebbels to use whatever methods he needed to restore law and order. Goebbels rallied loyal SA men and used the Berlin police to remove Stennes and his men from the Gau office. So like I say, there's this misconception that Wignats try to portray, but also what the left tries to portray, that that the Nazi Party was just, this all unified thing and everybody agrees and the sort of thing that the right wing always agrees with each other. No, that's bullshit. And even at the end, 1945, by that point, it was every man for themselves. So, but anyway, that's a whole different story. But mutiny fails simply because so few SA men decided to support it. So who does Stennes go up with? He decides to hook up with Otto Strasser and join the Black Front. This is sort of the whole Nazbol thing and whatnot. And this party was based in Prague, where they believed that they would be safer, and those who belonged to it were emigres from the Nazi Party. The thing is, obviously the Black Front also worked with Antifa, the original Antifa. They did work with them. So, it's one of those types of things, but different time. Obviously, nowadays, you wouldn't see it as much. So, Hitler wrote in an article in the Völkische Beobachter condemning Stennes as a salon socialist and claiming that he was rebelling against National Socialism. So here we go. Here's the part about the feds. I know I'm being long-winded here, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Don't worry. So next up, what does it say? Stennes sues Hitler for libel after an article in Der Angriff claimed that Stennes had been a police spy who had infiltrated himself into the Nazi Party. Literal, this person's a Fed, bro. Although it's kind of ironic because Hitler was an informant for the army, and then he became, leader of the party. After his name is right there, and I can't see it. But anywho, once he was kicked out, the original leader of the Nazi Party, Hitler then rebuilt it with 7 people and all that sort of thing. So Hitler was the real Fed. He was the real Fed, unironically. And of course, he had a Jewish lieutenant and everything else like that. So it's funny, yeah. But what happened? He sued Hitler for libel. It was a court case that Stennes was hardly likely to win. I mean, this is ridiculous, man. Like I said, this is some literal bullshit right here. But yeah. Walther Stennes later left Prague and went to China, where he worked in security matters and became a commander in the personal bodyguard of Chiang Kai-shek. He later went back to Germany. Let me see here. I'm going to read the article here from Walther Stennes. But yeah, he returned to Germany, 1949, leading member of the right-wing the German Social Party. After he retired to private life, he applied for recognition as a victim of National Socialist tyranny, which was rejected in 1957 by a federal court. He lived in Lüdenscheid until his death in 1983. So, like I say, you see that this whole talk about feds and whatnot, people act like this is new. Talking about, the Patriot Front issue and all this sort of thing that folks were going on like, oh, the feds and all that. And of course, conservatives are all like, oh, they're feds. They're, they all wear masks. It's just like, it's all ridiculousness. But it goes to show that this whole talk about feds is something that, didn't see. Like I said, that's not a new phenomenon. They even said it back then. Like I say, even back in the 1930s. They were calling each other feds. It was just a different sort of thing. So I think it's an interesting story, nonetheless, and it's an interesting aspect of history that people leave out. People are going to be accused of being feds, but also it goes to show, like, just be careful about what you join. It's like you join this group, the Sturmabteilung and all this sort of thing. And, you have folks like Walther Stennes, who I think to a point, it sounded like, he was like, hey, my people aren't getting paid here. So what are you going to do about it? So it sounded like he was a somewhat decent guy. He got caught up with the political bullshit and was like, yeah, I'm going to sue him because he called me a Fed, bro. It's just... And of course, like I said, you also, of course, have people like Horst Wessel as well, who was an SA guy, who was allegedly killed by communists. Different story about that. But, a lot of history is left out. But I think it's a telling story, especially in these days, in this time period. So yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed that and kind of just read that bit of story to say, oh man, they were calling each other feds back then. Word, yeah, they were. They were calling each other feds back then. It's nothing new, nothing different, you know. Anyway, hopefully y'all enjoy that. See you later. Goodbye.